In fiction, time travel is used for many things: historical research, to attempt to change a dangerous past, or simply to bring back specimens. But if you're from a far enough future, you may not be entirely sure what you're looking for, or how to recognize it when you do. The Flight of the Horse by Larry Niven. Read by Karl. The year was 750 AA, anti-atomic, or 1200 AD approximately. Hansville Svetch stepped out of the extension cage and looked about him. To Svetch, the atomic bomb was 1100 years old, and the horse was 1,000 years dead. It was his first trip into the past. His training didn't count. It had not included actual time travel, which cost several million commercials a shot. Svetch was groggy from the peculiar gravitational side effects of time travel. He was high on pre-industrial age air and drunk in his own sense of destiny. While at the same time he was not really convinced he had gone anywhere, or any when. Trade joke. He was not carrying the anesthetic rifle. He'd come to get a horse, and not expected to meet one at the door. How big was a horse? Where were horses found? Considering what the Institute had to go on, a few pictures in a salvaged children's book, and a little legend not to be trusted, the horse had once been used as a kind of animated vehicle. In an empty land beneath an overcast sky, Svetch braced himself with one hand on the curved flank of the extension cage. His head was spinning. It took him several seconds to realize he was looking at a horse. It stood 15 yards away, regarding Svetch with large, intelligent brown eyes, which were much larger than he expected. Furthermore, the horse in the picture book had had a glossy brown pelt with a short mane, while the beast now facing Svetch was pure white, with a mane that flowed like a woman's long hair. There were other differences, but no matter. The beast matched the book too well to be anything but a horse. To Svetch, it seemed that the horse was watching him, waiting for him to realize what was happening. Then, while Svetch wasted more time running while he wasn't holding a rifle, the horse laughed, turned, and departed. It disappeared with astonishing speed. Svetch began to shiver. No one had warned him that the horse might have been sentient. Yet the beast's mocking laugh had sounded far too human. Now he knew. He was deep, deep in the past. Not even the horse was as convincing as the emptiness the horse had left behind. No reaching apartment towers clawed the horizon. No contrails scratched the sky. The world with trees and flowers and rolling grassland innocent of men. The silence. It was as if Svetch had gone deaf. Heard no sound since the laughter of the horse. In the year 1100 post-atomic, such silence could have been found nowhere on Earth. Listening, Svetch knew at last he had reached the British Isles before the coming of civilization. He had traveled in time. The extension cage was a part of the time machine that did the traveling. It had its own air supply, and needed it while being pushed through time. But not here. Not before civilization's dawn. Not when the air had never been polluted with fission waste and the combustion of coal, hydrocarbons, tobacco, wood, et al. Now returning a panic from the world of the past to the world of the extension cage, Svetch nonetheless left the door open behind him. He felt better inside the cage. Outside was an unexplored planet, made dangerous by ignorance. Inside the cage, it was no different from a training mission. Svetch had spent hundreds of hours in a detailed mock-up of this cage with a computer running the dials. There had even been artificial gravity to simulate the peculiar side effects of motion in time. By now the horse would have escaped, but he now knew its size, neither were horses in the area. To business then. Svetch took the anesthetic rifle from where it was clamped to the wall. He loaded it with what he guessed was the right size of soluble crystalline anesthetic needle. The box said several different sizes, the smallest of which would knock a shrew harmlessly unconscious, the largest of which would do the same for an elephant. He slung the rifle and stood up. The world turned gray. Svetch caught a wall clamp to stop himself from falling. The cage had stopped moving 20 minutes ago. He shouldn't still be dizzy. But it had been a long trip. Never before had the Institute for Temporal Research pushed the cage beyond 0 PA. A long trip and a strange one, with gravity pulling Svetch's mass uniformly towards Svetch's navel. When his head cleared, he turned to where other equipment was clamped to a wall. The flight stick was a lift field generator and power source built on a 5 feet of pole, with a control ring at one end, a brush discharge at the other, and a bucket seat and belt in the middle. Compact even for Svetch's stage, the flight stick was a spin-off from the space flight industries. but it still weighed 30 pounds with the motor off. Getting out of the clamps took all of his strength. Svets felt queasy, very queasy. He began to pick up the flight stick and abruptly realized he was about to faint. He hit the door button and fainted. "We don't know where in Orchard you'll wind up," Rod Chen had told him. Rod Chen was the director of the Institute for Temporal Research, a large, round man with gross, exaggerated features and a permanent air of disapproval. That's because you can't focus on a particular time of day, or in a particular year for that matter. You won't appear underground or inside anything because of energy considerations. If you come out 1,000 feet in the air, the cage won't fall, it'll settle slowly, using up energy with a flagrant disregard for our budget. And Svets had dreamt that night, vividly. Over and over, his extension cage appeared inside solid rock, exploded with a roar and a blinding flash. "Officially, the horse is for the Bureau of History," Rod-Chen had said. "In practice, it's for the Secretary General, for his 20th birthday. Mentally, he's about 6 years old, you know. The royal family's getting a bit inbred these days. Imagine the scent of a picture book we picked up in 130 PA, and now the lad wants a horse." Svets had seen himself being shot for treason for the crime of listening to such talk. Otherwise, we'd never have gotten the appropriations for this trip. It's in a good cause. We do some cloning from the horse before we send the originals to the UN. Then, well, genes are a code, and codes can be broken. Get us some mail, we'll make all the horses anyone could want. But why wouldn't anyone want even one horse? Svets had studied a computer duplicate of this child's picture book that an agent had pulled from a ruined house 1,000 years ago. The horse did not impress him. Rod-Chen, however, terrified him. "We never sent anyone this far back," he told him the night before the mission, when it was too late to back out with honor. "Keep that in mind. If something goes wrong, don't count on the rule book. Don't count on the instruments. Use your head. Your head, Svets. God knows it's little enough to depend on." Svets had not slept till the hours before departure. "You're scared stiff," Rod-Chen had commented just before Svets entered the extension cage. "You can hide it, Svets. I think I'm the only one who's noticed. That's why I picked you. Because you could be terrified and go ahead anyway. Don't come back without a horse." The director's voice grew louder. "Not without a horse, Svets. Your head, Svets. Your head." Svets sat up compulsively. The air. Slow death if he didn't close the door. But the door was closed, and Svets was sitting on the floor holding his head, which hurt. The air system had transpired intact, complete with dials from a Martian sandboat. The dials read normally, of course, since his cage was sealed. Svets nerved himself to open the door. As the sweet, rich air of 12th century Britain rushed in, Svets held his breath and watched the dials change. Presently he closed the door and waited, sweating, while the air system replaced the heady poison with his own safe, breathable mixture. When next he left the extension cage, carrying the fight stick, Svets was wearing another spin-off from the interstellar exploration industries. It was a balloon, and he wore it over his head. It was also selectively permeable membrane, intended to pass certain gases in and others out, to make a breathing air mixture inside. It was nearly invisible except at the rim. There, while it was reflected most severely, the balloon showed as a narrow golden circle encircling Svets' head. The effect was not unlike a halo as shown in medieval paintings, but Svets didn't know about medieval paintings. He also wore a simple white robe, undecorated, constrained at the waist, otherwise falling in loose folds. The Institute thought that such a garment was least likely to violate taboos of sex or custom. The trade kit dangled loose from his sash, a heat and pressure gadget, a pouch of corundum, small vials of additives for color. Lastly, he wore a hurt and baffled look. It was that he could not breathe the clean air of his own past. The air of the cage was the air of Svets' time. It was nearly 4% carbon dioxide. The air of 750 anti-atomic held barely a tenth of that. Man was a rare animal, even here and now. He had breathed good air, he destroyed food forests, he had burnt scant fuel since the dawn of time. But industrial civilization meant combustion. Combustion meant carbon dioxide thick in the atmosphere many times faster than the green plants could turn it back to oxygen. Svets was at the far end of 2,000 years of adaptation to air rich in CO2. It takes a concentration of carbon dioxide to trigger the autonomic nerves in the lymph nodes in a man's left armpit. Svets had fainted because he wasn't breathing. So now he wore a balloon and felt rejected. He straddled the fight stick and twisted the control knob on the fore end. The stick lifted under him, and he wiggled into place on the bucket seat. He twisted the knob further. He drifted upward like a toy balloon. He floated over a lovely land, green and untenanted, beneath a pearl-gray sky empty of contrails. Presently he found a crumbling wall. He turned to follow it. He would follow the wall until he found the settlement. If the old legend was true, and Svetch reflected the horses certainly been big enough to drag a vehicle, he would find horses wherever he found men. Presently it became obvious that a road ran along the wall. There the dirt was flat and bare, and consistently wide enough for a walking man, whereas elsewhere the land rose and tilted and dipped. Hard dirt did not a freeway make, but Svetch got the point. He followed the road, running on a height of 10 meters. There was a man in worn brown garments. Hooded and barefoot, he walked the road with patience exhaustion, propping himself with his staff. His back was to Svetch. Svetch stopped to dip toward him to ask concerning horses. He refrained. With no way to know where the cage would alight, he had learned no ancient languages at all. He thought of the trade kit he carried, intended not for communication, but instead of communication. It had never been field tested. In any case, it was not for casual encounters. The pouch of corundum was too small. Svetch heard a yell from below. He looked down in time to see the man in brown running like the wind, his staff forgotten, his fatigue likewise. Something scared him, Svetch decided, but he could see nothing fearful. Something small but deadly, then. The assistant estimated that man exterminated more than 1,000 species of mammal and bird and insect, some casually, some with malice, between now and the distant present. In this time and place there was no telling what might be a threat. Svetch shuddered. The brown man with the hairy face might well have run from a stinging thing destined to kill Hanville Svetch. Impatiently, Svetch upped the speed of his fight stick. The mission was taking far too long. Who would have guessed the centers of population would have been so far apart? Half an hour later, shooting from the wind by a parabolic force field, Svetch was streaking on the road at 60 miles per hour. His luck had been incredibly bad. Whenever he had chanced across a human being, that person had just been leaving the vicinity. He had found no centers of population. Once he had noticed an unusual stone outcropping high on a hill. No law of geology known to Svetch could have produced such an angular, flat-sided monstrosity. Curious, he had circled above it, and abruptly realized the thing was hollow, riddled with rectangular holes. A dwelling for men? He didn't want to believe it. Living in the holes of such a thing would be like living underground. But men tended to build at right angles, and the thing was all right angles. Below, the hollowed stone structures were rounded, hairy-looking hummocks of dried grass, each with a man-sized door. Obviously, there must be nets for very large insects. Svetch had left that place quickly. The road rounded a swelling green hill ahead of him. Svetch followed, slowing. A hilltop spring set the stream bubbling downhill to break the road. Something large was drinking at the stream. Svetch jerked to a stop in midair. Open water. Deadly poison. It would have been hard put to say which had startled him more, the horse or the fact that he had just committed suicide. The horse looked up and saw him. It was the same horse. White as smoke with a flowery abundance of snowy mane and tail, it almost had to be the horse that had laughed at Svetch and run. Svetch recognized the malignance in its eyes in the moment before it turned its back. But how could it arrive so fast? Svetch was reaching for the gun when the situation turned upside down. The girl was young, surely no more than 16. Her hair was long and dark and plaited in complicated fashion. Her dress, of strangely stiff blue fabric, reached from her neck to her ankles. She was seated in the shadow of a tree, on dark cloth spread over the dark earth. Svetch had not noticed her. Might never have noticed her. But the horse walked up to her, folded its legs in alternate pairs, and laid its ferocious head in her lap. The girl had not yet seen Svetch. Xenophilia! Svetch snarled the worst word he could think of. Svetch hated aliens. The horse obviously belonged to the girl. He could not simply shoot it and take it. It would have to be purchased, somehow. He needed time to think. There was no time, for the girl might look up any moment. Baleful brown eyes watched him as he dithered. He dared waste no more time searching for the countryside for a wild horse. There was an uncertainty, a finagle factor in the math of time travel. Math by itself is an uncertainty and energy of a returning extension cage, and it increased with time. Let Svetch linger too long, and he could be roasted alive in the returning cage. Moreover, the horse had drunk open water. It would die, and soon, unless Svetch could return it to 1100 post-atomic. Thus, the beast knew when his time could not change the history of Svetch's own world. It was a good choice, if he could conquer his fear of the beast. The horse was tame. Young and slight as she was, the girl had no trouble controlling it. What was there to fear? But it was its natural weaponry, of which Ra Chen's treacherous picture book had shown no sign. Svetch surmised that later generations routinely removed it before the old animals were old enough to be dangerous. It should have come a few centuries later. There was a look in its eye. The horse hated Svetch, and it knew Svetch was afraid. Could he shoot it from ambush? No, the girl would worry if her pet collapsed without reason. She'd be unable to concentrate on what Svetch was trying to tell her. Have to work with the animal watching him. If the girl couldn't control it, or if he lost her trust, Svetch had little doubt that the horse would kill him. The horse looked up as Svetch approached, but made no other move. The girl watched too, her eyes round with wonder. She called something that must have been a question. Svetch smiled back and continued his approach. He was a foot above the ground and gliding at dead slow. Riding the world's only flying machine, he looked impressive as hell, and knew it. The girl did not smile back. She watched warily. Svetch was within yards of her when she scrambled to her feet. He stopped the fight stick at once and let it settle. Smiling softly, he removed the heat and pressure device from his sash. He moved with care. The girl was on the verge of running. The trade kit was a patch of corundum, several vials of additives, and a heat and pressure gadget. Svetch poured corundum into the chamber, added a dash of chromic oxide, and used the plunger. The cylinder grew warm. Presently, Svetch dropped a pigeon's blood star ruby into her hand, rolled his fingers, held it to the sun. It was red as dark blood, with a blazing white six-pointed star. It was almost too hot to hold. Stupid. Svetch held his smile rigid. Ra Chen should have warned him. What would she think when she felt the gem's unnatural heat? What trickery would she suspect? But he had to chance it. The trade kit was all he had. He bent and rolled the gem to her across the damp ground. She stopped to pick it up. One hand remained on the horse's neck, calming it. Svetch noted the rings of yellow metal around her wrist, and he also noticed the dirt. She held the gem high, looking into its deep red fire. "Ooh," she breathed. She looked at Svetch in wonder and delight. Svetch smiled back, moved 2 steps nearer, and rolled her a yellow sapphire. How had he twice chanced on the same horse? Svetch never knew, but he soon knew how to ride before him. He'd given the girl 3 gems. He held 3 more in his hand while he beckoned her onto the fight stick. She shook her head. She would not go. Instead, she met the animal. She and the horse, they watched Svetch for his next move. Svetch capitulated. He expected the horse to follow the girl with a gold rope behind him on the fight stick. But if they both followed Svetch, it would be the same. The horse stayed to one side and a little behind Svetch. It did not seem inconvenienced by the girl's weight. Why should it be? It must have been bred for the task. Svetch notched his speed higher to find out how fast he could conveniently move. Faster he flew, and faster. The horse must have a limit. He was up to 80 before he quit. The girl lay flat along the animal's back, hugging its neck to protect her face from the wind. But the horse ran on, daring Svetch with its eyes. How describe such motion? Svetch had never seen ballet. He knew how machinery moved, and this wasn't it. All I could think of was a man and a woman making love. Slippery, smooth, rhythmic motion, absolute single-minded purpose, motion for the pleasure of motion. It was terrible in its beauty, the flight of the horse. The word for such running must have died with the horse itself. The horse would never have tired, but the girl did. She tugged on the animal's mane, and it stopped. Svetch gave her the jewels he held, made 4 more, and gave her one. She was crying from the wind, crying and smiling as she took the jewels. Was she smiling for the jewels or for the joy of the ride? Exhausted, panting, she lay with her back against the warm, pulsing flank of the resting animal. Once her hand moved as she ran her fingers repeatedly through its silver mane. The horse watched Svetch with malevolent brown eyes. The girl was homely. It wasn't just a jarring lack of makeup. There was evidence of vitamin starvation. She was short, less than 5 feet in height, and thin. There were marks of childhood disease, but her happiness glowed behind her homely face, and it made her almost passable as she clutched the stones. Once she seemed rested, Svets remounted. They went on. He was almost out of conundrum when he reached the extension cage. There it was he ran into trouble. The girl had been awed by Svets's jewels and by Svets himself, perhaps because of his height or his ability to fly. But the extension cage scared her. Svets couldn't blame her. The sound of the door in it was no trouble, just a seemingly spherical mirror. But the other side blurred away in a direction man could not visualize. It scared Svets spitless the first time he saw the time machine in action. He could buy the horse from her, shoot it here and pull it inside using the fight stick to float it, but it was so much easier if it was worth a try. Svets used the last of his conundrum. Then he walked into the extension cage, leaving a trail of colored beads behind him. He had worried because the heat and pressure device would not produce facets. The stones all came out shaped like miniature hen's eggs. He was able to vary the color, using chromic oxide for red and ferric oxide for yellow and titanium for blue. He could vary the pressure planes to produce cat's eyes or star gems at will. Left a trail of small stones, red and yellow and blue. And the girl followed, frightened, but unable to resist the bait. By now she had nearly filled a handkerchief with the stones. The horse followed her into the extension cage. Inside, he looked at the 4 stones in Svets's hand, one of each color, red and yellow and light blue and black, the largest he could make. He pointed to the horse, then to the stones. The girl agonized. Svets was fired. She didn't want to give up the horse, and Svets was out of conundrum. She nodded, one swift jerk of her chin. Quickly, before she could change her mind, Svets poured the stones into her hand. She clutched the horse to her bosom and ran out of the cage, sobbing. The horse stood up to follow. Svets spun the rifle and shot it. A bead of blood appeared on the animal's neck. It shied back, then sighted along Svets along its natural bayonet. Poor kid, Svets thought as he turned to the door. She had lost the horse anyway. It had sucked polluted water from an open stream. Now he needn't only load the fight stick aboard. Motion cut the corner of his eye. A false assumption can be deadly. Svets had not waited for the horse to fall. It was something of a shock that he realized the truth. The beast wasn't about to fall. It was about to spear like a cocktail shrimp. He hit the door button and dodged. Exquisitely graceful, exquisitely sharp, the spiral horn slammed into the closing door. The animal turned like white lighting on the confines of the cage, and again Svets leapt for his life. The point missed him by half an inch. He plunged past him and into the control board, through the plastic panel and into the wiring beneath. Something sparked and something sputtered. The horse was taking careful aim, sighting along the spear in his forehead. Svets did the only thing he could think of. He pulled the home again lever. The horse screamed as it went into freefall. The horn, intended for Svets's navel, ripped out his ear and tore his breathing balloon wide open. Then gravity returned, but it was the peculiar gravity of an extension cage moving forward through time. Svets and the horse were pulled against the padded walls. Svets sighed in relief. He sniffed again in disbelief. The smell was strong and strange, like nothing Svets had ever smelled before. The animal's terrible horn must have damaged the airplane. Very likely he was breathing poison. If the cage didn't return in time. Would it return at all? Might be going anywhere, any when, the way that ivory horn had smashed through anonymous wiring. They might come out at the end of time, when not even the black infracenters gave not enough heat to sustain life. There might not even be a future to return to. He had left the fight stick. How would it be used? What would they make of it with control panel at one end and the brush-style static discharge at the other and the saddle in the middle? Perhaps the girl would try to use it. He could visualize her against the night sky in the light of a full moon. And how would that change history? The horse seemed on the verge of apoplexy. Its sides heaved, its eyes rolled wildly. Probably it was the cabin air, thick with carbon dioxide. Again, it might be the horse poison the horse had sucked from an open stream. Gravity died. Svets and the horse tumbled in free fall, and the horse queasily tried to gore him. Gravity returned, and Svets, who was ready for it, landed on top. Someone was already opening the door. Svets took the distance in one bound. The horse followed, screaming with rage, intent on murder. Two men went flying as it charged out into the Institute Control Center. "It doesn't take anesthetics," Svetch shouted over his shoulder. The animal's ability was hampered here among the desks and lighted screens. It was probably drunk on hyperventilation. Kept stimulating to discs and men. Svetch easily stayed ahead of the slashing horn. A full panic was developing. "We couldn't have done it without Zira," Rod told him much later. "Your idiot Tan Schwartz had the whole center terrorized. All of a sudden it went completely tame, walked after that frigid bitch Zira and let her lead it away." "Did he get to the hospital in time?" Rod nodded gloomily. Gloom was his favorite expression and was no indication of his true feelings. "We found over 50 unknown varieties of bacteria in the beast's bloodstream. You know how they look sick? He looked healthy as a... Must have tremendous stamina. Managed to save not only the horse, but most of the bacteria too, for the zoo." Svetch was sitting in a hospital bed, with his arm up to the elbow in a diagnostic machine. Was only the chance that he too allocated some long-extinct bacterium. He shifted uncomfortably, being careful not to move the wrong arm, and asked, "Did you ever find an anesthetic that worked?" "Nope. Sorry about that, Svetch. We still don't know why your needles didn't work. Tan Schwartz is simply immune to tranks of any kind." "Incidentally, there was nothing wrong with your air plant. You were smelling the horse." "Wish I'd known that. I thought I was dying. Driving the interns crazy, that smell. We can't seem to get out of the center." Rod sat down on the edge of the bed. "What bothers me is the horn on his forehead. Horse in the picture book had no horns." "No, sir. Must be a different species. It's not really a horse. Svetch will have to send you back. It'll break our budget." "I disagree, sir." "Don't be so polite. Then don't be so stupid, sir." Svetch was not going back for another horse. People who kept tame horses must have developed a habit of cutting off the horn when the animal was a pup. Why not? You also know how dangerous that horn is. Must be dangerous for a domestic animal. Then why does our horse have a horn? That's why I thought it was wild the first time I saw it. I suppose they didn't start cutting off horses until later in history. Rod nodded in gloomy satisfaction. "I thought so too. Our problem is that the Secretary General is barely bright enough to notice the horse has a horn, and that picture book horse doesn't. He's bound to blame me." Svetch wasn't sure what was so special to him. "I'll have to have the horn amputated." "Someone's bound to notice the scars," says Svetch. "Tangent, you're right. Good enemies at court. They're only too happy to claim I'd mutilate the Secretary General's pet." Rod glared at Svetch. "All right, let's have your idea." Svetch was busy regretting it. Why had he spoken? His vicious, beautiful horse, tamely docked of his killer horn. He found the thought repulsive. His impulse had betrayed him. What could they do but remove the horn? He had it. Change the picture book, not the horse. A computer could duplicate the book in detail with a horn on every horse. Use the Institute computer, then wipe the tape afterwards. Morosely thoughtful, Rod said. "That might work. I know someone who could switch the books." He looked up from under bushy black eyebrows. "Of course, you'd have to keep your mouth shut." "Yes, sir." "Don't forget," Rod stood up. "When you get out of here, you start a 4-week vacation." "I'm sending you go back for one of these," Rod told him 4 weeks later. He opened the bistro. "We picked up the book in a public park around 10 post-atomic. Left the kid who was holding it playing with a corundum egg." Said to examine the picture. "That's ugly. That's really ugly. You're trying to balance the horse, right? The horse is so beautiful. You got to have one of these or the universe goes off balance." Rod closed his eyes in pain. "Just go and get us the Gila monster, Svetch. The Secretary General wants a Gila monster." "How big is it?" They both looked at the illustrations. There was no way to tell. "From the looks of it, we'd better use the big extension cage." Svetch barely made it back that time. He was suffering from total exhaustion and extensive second-degree burns. The thing he brought back was 30 feet long, had vestigial bat-like wings, breathed fire, didn't look very much like the illustrations, but it was close as anything he'd found. The Secretary General loved it. The end.